Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, thank you very much for another round of virtual discussion of IFA. Now, we have chosen wrong day, but I think by now the whole result is out and people know who is winner, who are the losers. But we don't know who are the winner, losers in the Gulf and Middle East. So to decipher that, we have very distinguished panelists. We couldn't have found better, more qualified, more eminent, more knowledgeable people to enlighten us what is going on there. Now, you all know Mr. Talmiz Ahmed. He is a known expert on Middle East. We see him on television. He writes almost every day. He has written several books. I was seeing there, he was also given some King Abdul Aziz medal at Saudi Arabia. He written a book called Children of Abraham at War and the Islamist Challenge in West Asia, Reforms in our world. And he has been writing very extensively since October 2023 about what is going on in Gaza. So we would love to hear his views. Then we have Dr. Awad. I don't know how many of you know that he is product of Delhi University. I was just MBBS of all that. And he has been all around the world in Dubai and Jaffna and Kargil, Afghanistan and Iraq. And he was captured and he escaped execution from there. And he has been all around giving very informed views. And I think he's Distinguished Fellow at Tilotama Foundation and also associated with Global Counter-Terrorism Council. So welcome, Dr. Awad. I was little worried whether you will be coming from Italy or you will settle down there. We have a friend, T.S. Thirumoorthy. He was last posted as PR to UN. He was earlier Secretary at External Ministry, and he is currently Distinguished Professor at IIT Madras. So I don't want to claim what my distinguished fellows are going to say. I have very limited views on this because I can't claim expertise like them, though I have served 10 years in Syria and Libya put together and met a lot of Palestinian leaders. Actually, I used to know George Hawass of Popular Front in Damascus, Hawatmeh of Democratic Front and some others, but that was different time. And I met Arafat many times in Libya, but that was shaking hand at the airport 6 or 7 times during my 5 years in Tripoli. And also I received him when I was at DCPC in Delhi. Now, I personally feel that while I can understand the pent-up feeling of anger, frustration, hatred of Palestinians against Israel for the occupation, for what they have done to them all these years. But what Hamas did on 7th October 2023 was wrong. It was nothing less than heinous terrorist crime, killing 1,200 people on a holiday. So, but what Netanyahu did in retaliation to punish is 10 times, 100 times bigger wrong. He called them animals. I think from that definition, he will much, much bigger animal. I mean, you can't kill 61,000 people. 21,000 of them are children. And our whole city is what is it? Piles and piles of rubble, nothing is left. And people are hurt like cattle. So you go to north, go to south, go there, what is there? Going where? So I don't know. I'm very sad that whole world watch, passive spectators, bystanders, they didn't do that. I personally feel there are two sets of people who could have really not stopped, at least ended much earlier. Arab leaders, if they had shown spine, they had shown courage, and they had really put pressure, 1,000 lives could have been saved. But they met, they discussed, they issued some statement, nothing more came out. Other is President Biden. If he wanted, he could have stopped much, much earlier. He went on talk about ceasefire deadlines, at the same time continue sending weapons, money, and whatnot. So it was a double way of treating both sides equal, which is not the right way of doing it. And then what we are seeing is all other countries also, they issued a statement, nobody. UNSG can do nothing unless the members are there. What is he said? Gaza is graveyard. WHO chief said same thing. Now Trump is saying it's a demolition site. All these are all our things. What happens? Why 61,000 people should be killed in today's world? And why whole world should be passively watching what is happening there? What entails future? I don't know these distinguished friend will try to enlighten us. So we will begin with you, Thiru, because you are the only person who has actually lived and served in Gaza. We have seen, but you have lived there. Now you can say, look, Hamas may in bravado, whatever they can claim that we have done this. And the fact remains, the moment ceasefire declared, the spontaneous exhilaration by the common ordinary Palestinians shows how fed up they were of what was going on. They wanted some kind of peace from there. And they're running. We saw for weeks, thousands of them going back to where? Going back to where they used to have some home, but there's nothing, their fires are there. I was reading somewhere more than 2,000 bodies have been dug out from the debris. So I don't know what really awaits them there. And secondly, what future awaits them? Because all these plans by others, like the plan of newly elected president, that he will do the Middle East era, and you really go 2 million people can go to Jordan, Egypt, other countries, and whatever. It doesn't make any sense to us, but I don't know. You will tell us what is the current condition. I saw 97% of civilian buildings have been destroyed. So many hospitals and other institutes have been destroyed. What is the condition? And people who are returned, they really live there? And then what really, how do you see these kind of plans which President Trump has in mind? And I'm sure this will music to the ears of Netanyahu and his right-wing supporters in the cabinet. So over to you. Unmute yourself, unmute. Siru, you are muted. You should unmute. That little thing, the red color mic kind of thing, you press it. Yes. No, you can't unmute?
Yeah, now I can. I know, I think
okay, fine.
you had to unmute and then...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So thank you very much for giving me an opportunity in your program. Yes, I lived in Gaza between 96 and 98. That was the time of President Arafat. I went to open a mission there. And it is interesting that, after October 7th, within 2 weeks of the hostilities and the war, one of the first buildings which was actually bombed and destroyed was the building I lived in. So, and I didn't know this till someone pointed out that, look, in the CNN or somewhere, this is being bombed, that's your building. And it was a very surreal experience for me, frankly, to see the place where I lived in being bombed and reduced to rubble. But my first thought was actually, what happened to the people there? They were all friends of mine and people like Abu Zakari, his children. And that was my thought. And I still don't have an answer for those. And I really hope that they're alive somewhere and they are doing well. So there's just something, because since you mentioned about my living there for 2 years, the election of President Trump is certainly having an impact in the recent developments in the region. There is no doubt about it. But it is also important for us to remember that what Netanyahu wanted to do, was already done during the tenure of President Biden. For example, the weakening of the Iranian proxies, the tit for tat with missile with Iran, and decapitating Hamas leaders, pulverizing Gaza, killing 61,000 people, and then the regime change in Syria. I think all that happened before, Mr. Trump had took over as president. So therefore, the complexion of the Middle East actually changed during the time of President Biden's tenure. And in a way, Mr. Trump had a different, Middle East to look at. And so I think that way he had probably a different way of looking at it, because he was not, he could look forward and see what to do next. And of course, the bigger question, which I don't know whether we're going to really answer it today, I don't think so, is whether whether Israel will snatch political defeat from the jaws of a military victory, because Israel is really in a dominant position right now. Now, coming to the ceasefire, it is very clear that Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to the ceasefire only because of the pressure which came from Mr. Trump and Steve Witkoff and others. Now, the ceasefire proposals, as you all know, they were already there since May last year. And it was not only put forward by Biden, but it was also passed by the Security Council. And it was done in consultation with Israel, I'm reasonably sure. But Israel didn't want it to happen. And therefore, they all blamed Hamas for breaking the ceasefire. So one of the questions which you put forward is the policies of Biden, the contradictory policies of Biden. Yes, the policies were certainly contradictory, and one policy was for public consumption, the other policy was the policy which they wanted to pursue. But it is also a fact that while, yes, he may not have been able to push Netanyahu in a direction he wanted, but certainly it was a conscious decision on the part of President Biden to let Netanyahu do what he wanted. And that was weakening of the Iranian proxies and, the trying to eradicate Hamas. These are all goals which Netanyahu had, which the US subscribed to. I thought I should mention that. And now, how far will the ceasefire go beyond the 42 days? Now, that is a question which has been uppermost in many of the minds. And I don't think Trump is going to take very kindly to the hostilities being resumed after 42 days. That's the way I look at it, because he has taken great pride in the fact that there has been no conflicts during his time, and he would like to keep it that way. And he has talked about leaders praising him and telling him that they all want peace and they don't want killings in Gaza. So I think given that context, at least on one aspect, the pressure is really on PM Netanyahu for ensuring that there is a permanent ceasefire, given the way in which Trump looks at this entire, the way after 42 days. So the pressure is on Mr. Netanyahu to make sure that he doesn't use an excuse to start the hostilities again. In which case, our question would be, what is his ask going to be? I think the first ask which he will have, which I think is a no-brainer, will be that Hamas cannot continue in Gaza. He will ask for at least the exile of Hamas, and they cannot be part of the future governance of Gaza. And therefore, I mean, like it happened in Afghanistan, where they replaced Taliban with Taliban, I don't think he will agree to Hamas being replaced with Hamas. So I think that will be his first and major ask. The second and important ask will be the desire to annex the West Bank, which they call Judea and Samaria. And you are all aware that in the West Bank, for the last more than a couple of years, you are already having an undeclared war, an undeclared conflict. And it has become worse. And now they are besieging Jenin, they're besieging Tulkarem, and they're besieging all these places. And a lot of eviction is going on. Their livelihoods are being destroyed. So I think somewhere down the line, and also his partners are very clear. They've said that 2025 will be the year for annexation of Judea and Samaria. So therefore, that will be is going to be his second ask. So therefore, and interestingly, Trump was asked about this during that press conference. And he said very interestingly, he said that we haven't taken a decision on that, but please expect an announcement in a month. So it was very interesting, his answer to this. But I think Trump's, the way he is, I would say the reaction of President Trump as a way of answering these two asks of Netanyahu. So I think this is the context in which he is now proceeding, and his reactions should be put in this context. Because after all, he was the one who moved the US embassy to Jerusalem. He was the one who closed the office of the PLO. He was the one who recognized the Golan being annexed. So I think, therefore, when he waxes eloquent on Gaza and he calls it, he's going to make it the Riviera of the Middle East, and he's actually, what he's doing is that he's known to take maximalist positions. He's done that with Mexico, he's done with Canada. So he's taking a maximalist position and trying to put pressure on Hamas and on Egypt, Jordan, and also the Arab countries, particularly the Gulf, and to make sure that the focus on Gaza and the goal which they have on Gaza is realized one way or another. And yes, I mean, if you look at it, this is absolutely something unacceptable. Nobody is going to accept a third Nakba having for the Palestinians. But I think more, if you cut through the clutter, this is what he's trying to achieve. And the other aspect is he wants the Abraham Accords to move. And this has been his legacy, and he wants Saudi Arabia in. And therefore, that is another factor he's going to look at very carefully, and to see how far can he push the envelope. After all, Saudi Arabia also, and not Saudi Arabia, the others who subscribed to it, UAE and others, they actually had no reference of Palestine in the Abraham Accords. So in a way, they had already moved beyond the in fact, they even moved beyond the Arab peace plan of 2002. It says very clearly that normalization should come with certain steps being taken for the Palestinian state. So what is going to happen on the Abraham Accord is going to be a factor in his thinking. So the pieces on the chessboard, so to say, they are being moved, and with a lot of public posturing and others. Now, as far as the Gulf and the Arab world is concerned, the world actually, in a way, has so far kept quiet. I mean, I think there is no other way of describing it, and particularly the Gulf countries. I think they have just kept quiet, with the exception of Iran, maybe, and they have seen the thing unfold. So you had asked the question, whether the Israeli attacks could be averted if the Arabs had taken a firmer stand. Certainly, they may not have been averted, but they certainly would not have dragged on for 15 months if the Arab countries and the Gulf countries had taken a firmer stand. But that said, Gulf is not unhappy with what has happened, because they have always felt that Iran and their proxies are the ones which are their biggest threat. And in fact, in 2021, you all know that the Aramco facilities were actually struck with missiles by the Houthis. And so therefore, there was a real threat, or a perceived, whichever way you look at it, but there was a threat. So that was really their main issue, and not the Palestinian cause per se. And if the Palestinian cause was the main issue, then they would have had it in the Abraham Accords. So I think they were willing to look beyond the Arab peace plan of 2002 and go ahead and do the normalization with Israel. And they themselves, the Gulf countries, also wanted to move beyond. And move beyond the historical issues which has traditionally plagued the region. And they probably, they had big ambitions for the region and for themselves, and they felt that this could be achieved only if, they went and did this deal with Israel under the umbrella of the United States. So I think before October 7th, there was definitely, it looked as if that the Palestinian cause was being abandoned. And there was no doubt about it. And that must have been a major factor in the Hamas doing what it did, which, as you correctly said, it was certainly not acceptable the way they did it. And finally, before I conclude, I just wanted to, a word on Iran. I think, interestingly, now there is an opportunity, in my opinion, for Iran and the United States to do the deal which they have not talked about, but both of them probably desire. And, I think Iran is, I think, not just a bit isolated, but they also probably are in a very, very vulnerable position. And interestingly, President Trump, when he's asked, he said very clearly that his only focus is really on the nuclear bomb, which they should not acquire, and nuclear capability. But otherwise, he talked about Iran as a strong country and, don't think they are a pushover type of thing. So maybe there is some synergy which can happen. And if that comes about, and it can be a bit of a game changer, actually. So thank you very much. And this is my the broad observation which I have in that.
Thank you, Thiru, giving very realistic assessment what is going on there, especially with your personal perspective, experience there. Now I move to Dr. Awad. Nobody knows Gulf regions and Middle East leaders more than you. My simple question, what is in the mind of Arab leaders? After Trump's announcement, they have all in private very strongly said, we will not accept it. I was told Egyptians are very strong, Saudi Arabia is strong. But how steadfast, how committed they are? Do you think a stage can come, suppose Trump goes ahead with his plans, Do they have courage to say, okay, we will break diplomatic relations with Israel? Over to you. Yeah, unmute yourselves. This is a... Yeah, you are still not...
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. I think you are the one responsible to mute us and unmute us. So always you should do it. You are the admin.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having me, Ambassador Surendra. Good evening, everybody, and I'm very happy to be on your platform again with such a distinguished and knowledgeable people. And thank you for the humble introduction. And I'm very happy to see a distinguished guest and audience on your dais. The thing I wanted to touch briefly on the Arab-Israeli conflict, and that will bring us to this current scenario, is important to throw a little bit of history about the Arab after the Sykes-Picot, and the First World War. All the Arab country went under the occupation by the colonial power for a few years, like the 25 years, and some of the Gulf country on the 70s, they got their liberated and independence. All those years, most of the leaders of the Arab country post Second World War came on tanks and authoritarian regimes brought by the West to continue their hegemony and support in that part of the world. And in fact, we all know that the creation of Israel have created havoc in the region. And ever since this colonial project, which started in Israel, continued till date. When I am calling it colonial project, I'm not denying the Israelis or the Jews the right of existence in Palestine. But my point here is very simple, because it's a continuous process till date, because there is a project which is led by the West, and this project continued till date. So the Arab countries have taken these issues of Palestine as a pan-Arab issues. In fact, it has been the Palestinian cause which has united the Arab governments, and rhetorically or practically, whoever supported the Palestinian cause, or whether seriously about bringing a Palestinian state after the division of Palestine, we are yet to debate in history the role of every leader of the Arab world, whether he was seriously helping the Palestinian or he's sabotaging the Palestinian cause. Anyway, the things developed only after after the post Second World War. As you know, most of the leaders in the Arab country tried to have a democratic setup, including Syria, including in Iran. We know that 3-4 times the United States, the CIA intervened on toppled regime in Syria. So they didn't want a democratic state. Whether it's also in Iran, Mossadegh was removed, and also they brought about the Shah of Iran, and they changed the scenario in the area. So there was a focus on the American project of diverting the war on Israel and turning it into a bilateral and not a pan-Arab Israeli-Arab conflict. So what happened is, when the Iraqi regime, Saddam Hussein, started the war with the Islamic Revolution in Iran, 1979, it went for 8 years with the full support of the United States, which considered to be a Sunni regime in Iraq against the majority Shia in the country. So we saw the fight against Iran for 8 years, supported by the Gulf country and the Western world, who have built up the chemical plant of Saddam Hussein, and also tried to build up his nuclear site, but then totally destroyed it, and he used it against his own people. So 8 years, 2 million people killed on both sides, and we had seen the total destruction. And after that, they came back to the Algerian Accord, which is signed between them. Now, this have led to another conflict in the the Taliban in Afghanistan. It was the Sunni majority that has created a Taliban regime there, because of the fight against the Soviet Union, have brought about the Shia in Iran. So that Shia-Sunni balancing of power in the region have started appearing in the region. So it's turning it into more of a Shia-Sunni conflict, rather than looking at it from the angle of an Islamic or a pan-Islamic scene. So the Arab countries with the American regime change start falling one after the other. After the invasion of Afghanistan, the overthrowing of Taliban, the United States unilaterally, exceptionally went along with their allies, the Blue Eyes, New Zealand, Canada, and Australia and UK, went into invading Iraq, and they invaded Iraq under the weapon of mass destruction, deceiving the public, which has never been there, and continue the same policy. The reason is here is now not only that it has been diverting the attention from the respect of Palestine, because we shifted focus into an internal fighting among the Arab countries. And with the creation of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, the invasion of Iraq gave the platform of forming another one called the Islamic State of the Levant, which was in Iraq, then is shifted into Syria, Iraq and Syria, and the Islamic State of the Levant. And then we have seen the Arab Spring have spread in such a scenario in the Arab world under the pretext of spreading democracy in the Arab world, which has never been seen. It's just an introduction of political Islam. So Palestinian cause and all these conflict was diverting the attention, because in 1991, 92, when we went to the Madrid conference, most of the Arab countries agreed for a settlement with Israel. What Israel refused to have any kind of a peace deal. So they had a separate deal with the Palestinian Oslo agreement. They had a separate deal with Jordan, and they continue the same policy. In fact, after Oslo agreement, we all know most of the West Bank and the territory of Palestine have fully expanded under the settlement of the Israelis. So the questions of Palestinian two-state solution have never been in the mindset of any Israeli leaders. They never thought about it. Nor there's any Islamic country applied political Islam as much as now they are promoting it in Syria, and as a model to spread into other regions. So Hamas, which is on the other hand has been the dominant force in Gaza, was fully supported by the Israeli government, a repeated Israeli government. They funded them. Even Netanyahu has been accused of siphoning $200 million from Qatar to Hamas, and he kept $50 million for himself. There are cases against him in the Israeli court, which has to be exposed quite very soon. The second part is, we remember that the Muslim Brotherhood organization in Egypt is the right wing of it, the right hand of it is Hamas. So Hamas has been an Islamic ideologist organization based in Gaza Strip. How they did it the 7th of October, was it a pre-plan? Was it a false flag? Still, we have to debate, because what we are hearing, the recent news of yesterday from the Gallant, from one of a contemporary minister of Israel, speaking about that they applied Hannibal theory and killing their own people, not allowing Hamas to carry much of them. I think there are still lots of things to be talking about. So to kill the Palestinian cause has to be this total destruction of Gaza, which Israel's objective was to completely annihilate the whole of Palestine, obliterate the Palestinian cause. So when this happened, the massacre and the human crisis started in Palestine, most of the Arab countries start be awakening, because for Arab people, for the mass in the street, Palestine is still a living cause for them. So the Arab leader may have gone or diverted their attention into Abraham Accord. They thought that they have given up with the Palestinian cause because of their internal problem, because of their economic situation, because of certain many issues, and they thought this is a bilateral issue. I think this 7th October brought back a Palestinian cause, not only for the Arabs, but also for the rest of the world. Now, the scenario have totally changed now. There is no question of a Palestinian state coming to existence, because Israel is adamant about not allowing it at any case. What we have seen, the truce happening in Gaza, the killing of Hezbollah leaders in Lebanon, the destruction of Syria and bringing another force. There is a diversion now to go to Iraq and then into Iran. This is one. And secondly, Egypt and Jordan are at the checkmate. They are now at the currently very vulnerable for the Islamic forces to take over and topple these governments. So therefore, you see the much of tension and apprehension, because when you see a president of the United States coming up and throwing what we call the fox and mirror, or that he is trying to deceive the public by calling emptying Gaza, he doesn't understand the part of history and the geography. So Arab leaders are very much in anger, and total political stand of comprehensive political stand of the Arab world is not to support any sort of a process of evicting the Palestinians from their homeland. What worries us is now the focus totally shifted to West Bank. West Bank is facing a similar replica of what happened in Gaza Strip. And if Israel continued, because the coalitions currently in Israel, the right-wing coalitions, is only surviving on the promise that they will annihilate the whole of West Bank, as Mr. Trump promised them that they wanted to declare it as part of Israel. So I think what we are witnessing in the Middle East is a total anarchy and uncertainty, and none of the Arab leaders is really in a position to take a firm stand collectively or individually to support the Palestinian cause. Whether they like it or they don't like it, the whole issue is here. If there is no Palestinian state, then we are continuously going to see a perpetual provocation for continuous wars in West Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Awad, as usual, not mincing words, release, calling a spade. Now I will come to my friend Talmiz Ahmad, and I must mute him first so that there's no problem. Talmiz, over to you. Yes, Talmiz, you are on mute, yes. You have heard everybody, you have your views, but I want you to, with your knowledge, insight, what is the end game for US, end game for Israel, end game for the Arab leaders, and end game for the Palestinians? Very simplistic question, but I'm sure you can enlighten all the four. Thank you.
We cannot discuss any end game at this point because the conflict is still ongoing. The ceasefire, the first phase of the ceasefire has only completed 2 weeks. It has gone satisfactorily. But now you have the phenomenon of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has the capacity of seriously undermining an existing arrangement, possibly as an end in itself. We have seen in his second term that he has attempted in the first few days itself to make a mark, to remind the American people and indeed the international community that a phenomenon is now present in our midst, who will overturn most things that we have taken for granted. I think he's an enigma. Many people have attempted to understand where he's coming from and where he would like to go. As of now, we have used the term in his first term that he's a megalomaniac. Possibly that is true. I don't know because I'm not a psychologist. But he really, the specific thing that he wants the Nobel Peace Prize as the pinnacle of his political career. He is today a very rare individual that he actually has untrammeled power because the Senate and the House are with him. Very large sections of the American population are with him. And he seems to have unstinted support from these cohorts. Therefore, he is making a very major intervention. What he has done is to overturn many arrangements relating to Gaza. But I'm not sure he has thought it through. Many commentators have suggested that there are three possible options in terms of analyzing what Donald Trump is up to. A, that he has made a very serious policy statement. B, that he has only articulated a negotiating posture in order to stimulate some other out-of-the-box thinking. Or number three, that he is grandstanding, that it is a rhetoric as an end in itself, that there is no policy, there is no negotiation. It is just Donald Trump announcing to the world, what a great guy I am. Now, we don't know, because this announcement relating to Gaza has come as a shock even to his own officials. And the attempts they have made to explain to us what he has in mind, in fact, contradicts what he has himself said. So we don't know. We really don't. You also had Netanyahu grinning away as if he was thrilled by what has been said. He has taken only a small part of President Trump's remark about depopulating Gaza. What he has left out is the second part where the Americans will now own Gaza. That is completely contradictory to the agenda of the Netanyahu government, particularly his right-wing elements. For the messianic forces that today dominate Israeli politics, this is sacred Israeli land, the land promised to the Jewish people. There is no provision in this scenario for an American ownership of this property or the construction of a Riviera. So there is, you see, Netanyahu also is not willing to contradict the president in his presence. He needs this person completely on his side. So we are looking at a scenario of extreme confusion. Now, coming to the Arab countries, you see, many people, it's very easy for us to say in different capitals, what are the Arabs doing? The factual position is that there is no power on earth that can influence Netanyahu and the Israeli government except the United States. And for at least the last 50 years, no one can recall an American president building up the courage to actually inflict upon Israel anything that it does not want. The last time I would say was in 1956 when President Eisenhower made it clear that they have to vacate the Suez Canal. I don't recall any other occasion. Yes, there was a degree of pressure upon Israel after the Cold War was over from George Bush Sr. to get into Madrid. But the real dialogue at Oslo was actually done between the Israelis and the Palestinians on their own without any external pressure. So I would say to you that bad mouthing the Palestine by these Arab leaders is not particularly helpful. They have issued some of the most robust statements that are possible. They have convened meetings of the Arab League and the Islamic and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They have been very strong. They have supported Iran in their statement. They have done and they have taken a very tough position on Palestine. Do recall here, do not rubbish that part. Blinken pleaded with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to go ahead with normalization. And Bob Woodward has made it clear in his book that Blinken took the message of Mohammed bin Salman to Netanyahu and said the Crown Prince wants two things. Number one, that you vacate Gaza. And number two, that you go ahead seriously and credibly and irreversibly towards a Palestinian state. So I think that that is an important point. It suits Americans and Israeli commentators, particularly from the right, to play down these aspects. But I think they are extremely important. I don't believe normalization is down the corner just yet. We have a long way to go. What happened in 2020 took place in a set of circumstances that those have fundamentally changed. Iran and Saudi Arabia have today built a fairly robust relationship. And I think this relationship stands, and I don't think it's going anywhere, downhill. It's going to be important. The overwhelming majority of the Arab people have spoken totally in favor of the Palestinian cause. Also recall here, in the churn that we are talking about in world order, where you have the emergence of the global south, the global south, with rare exceptions, is also totally supportive of the Palestinian cause. So I would say to you that don't play down these very significant developments that have happened. The Americans are not carrying the world. The Americans are alone. Biden has a different scenario. Biden had called himself a Zionist. And now we know from Bob Woodward's book and other sources that he actually took a lot of money as senator from AIPAC, from the Israeli lobbyists. He has been in the pay of AIPAC right from the beginning of his senatorial career, he himself called himself a Zionist. So we don't need to look at beyond the point. The American leadership is totally committed to the Israeli cause and has taken huge sums of money to support this cause. Also, you know that there are sections now, the so called Israel lobby is a very, very rich and extremely influential lobby. So now, with regard to Donald Trump, his support base is not from the traditional Israeli lobby, it is from the Christian evangelists. And the Christian, as you know, Netanyahu, the day he landed in the United States, he called on the Christian evangelists. They are talking about depopulating Gaza, and taking over West Bank. West Bank has 3.6 million people, and 2.3 million people, Palestinians, live in Gaza. They have done all the violence that Israel can possibly do. They have done that violence consistently for 40 years, and the Palestinian cause has not withered away. What are they talking about? There is no sense of reality. What are you going to do with these 2.3 million people? What are you going to do with the 3.6 million people? There is a complete miasma of ignorance and prejudice that prevails today, both in Tel Aviv and in Washington. And I don't think we can take any of these things seriously.
Okay, Talbi, thanks a lot for enlightening us. You said the global South supporting Palestinian cause, yes. But how many global South countries, except Brazil and South Africa, have openly criticized what Trump has said?
You see, these remarks of Trump are not serious remarks. I belong to that category that believes that for Trump, rhetoric, posturing, aggressive posturing are ends in themselves. Yeah. Some of them lead to some very spontaneous and impulsive acts like withdrawal from WHO, absence of some withdrawal from the Paris Accord. All of these are part of they are part of the ideological agenda. Overwhelmingly, it may not amount to much. If you remember, when we had the non-aligned movement during the Cold War, the Americans would constantly rubbish it. And yet, a huge majority of the international community took positions that were not supportive of the global binary at that time and asserted their own autonomy. That same pattern of asserting autonomy and taking decisions in support of their own interests is now a pattern with regard to the global south.
Okay. Now, before I open to questions to other two panelists, Trimurti and Dr. Awad, do you want to comment on any comment of Ambassador Talmid Ahmad? Thiru? Thiru, you are still there? Okay, I will unmute you. I see you. That is just a minute. Yes, now you. Yes, unmute now. Yes.
No, thank you, sir. No, I think, the only comment I had, and I think that's why, the thing is that when UAE and Bahrain and I think Morocco, they did the Accords, the Abraham Accords, effectively, they were saying no to the Arab Peace Plan of 2002. So, in effect, they went ahead with the normalization with Israel without not even a fig leaf of a commitment from Israel to move towards a Palestinian state. So therefore, and Saudi Arabia, that was actually, from whatever I can see from the media, was literally weeks away from agreeing to the Abraham Accords, which would, once again, I'm sure the wording would have been exactly the same as the earlier ones, which would mean that they would have the Saudi, after all, the Arab Peace Plan initiative, whatever, was really the Saudi proposal. And so they would have, in fact, gone back on their own proposal on Palestine. And effectively, if they had actually done it, that would mean that the Gulf countries, and in many ways, I suppose they reflect the Arab sentiments, that they are not, a Palestinian cause is not important for them. So that was the context in which, I thought that, whatever may be the rhetoric which they may say now, and I'm not doubting it, because they have a domestic audience and a domestic, they have to go and cater to their domestic thing. But at the end of the day, before 7th of October, they certainly were moving in a direction in which the Palestinian cause was not the most important for them. And they would, I mean, there are, of course, speculation that Hamas realized it and they did what they did, realizing that once Saudi Arabia shifts, and then everything goes. So that was the context in which I felt that maybe there was this gray area where the Gulf and the Arab sentiments were not in favor of actively finding a Palestinian solution. That was the context. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Awad, you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add 2 points here. One is that most of the Arab country, there was a recent survey which is conducted in many of the Arab capitals to see that 97% of the Arab believe now that the Palestinian cause is a pan-Arab cause. So it is back on the table. So any government, they may not be popular among the Arab population. Many of the Arab population believe that their governments are not doing enough for the Palestinian cause. So I think if any of the Arab country would like to move with the American pressures on one side, and because of the current scenario in the region, into the fold of integrating Israel into the Arab world without the Palestinian cause, I think there will be lots of resentment within the street. And if there is no solution, so we may face more instability in the Arab world. And moreover, in this survey also, they have made it that Israel and the United States are the two main causes of terrorism and instability in West Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. I see among the audience, we have our friend Anil Wadhwa, who was secretary visiting Gulf countries all the time. Anil, are you there? Can you unmute yourself? Anil. Can you unmute yourself, Anil? Can you hear me? I think we have some problem there. Anyway, does anybody want to ask any question? Mr. Buda Bagai, let me just see whether I can unmute you. Okay. Now you unmute yourself.
Unmute. Hello. Yes. No, my question is, could India have taken a more supportive view of the UN resolution instead of just saying that, look, we have our self-interest, our defense interest with Israel? I mean, is that really the right thing to do for a country which was founded by Mahatma Gandhi and wants peace among all nations? Thank you.
Okay, tell me, can you comment on this?
You see, there has been a lot of discussion about India's position. And in the initial stages, there was some degree of confusion because not only is there a political and military relationship between the two countries, there is also an ideological affinity between the ruling government in India and the Zionist movement in Israel. So there has been there is a degree, at the popular level, large sections of the Hindutva cohorts have been led to believe that Israel constitutes a unique model which they should emulate in terms of creating a state order which would give power, authority, and influence to a people to a small restrictive community as opposed to the larger community that exists. Whatever the value of that, what we have seen now is that India has become very supportive of the UNGA resolution, which is the maximum that you can do. What more can you do? There is not just that India did not do something or should have done something. It is that India was not relevant to the proceedings. Just as most other countries in the world do not carry any influence in Tel Aviv whatsoever. Tel Aviv has been a law unto itself from the very beginning, so long as they enjoy American support. Now, what they have succeeded in doing from 1967 onward, and particularly during the period of Begin, they have consolidated a support base not just through the Jewish community and sections of the elite within the Jewish community. They have also won over the Christian evangelists. It's a very formidable political support base in the United States. Therefore, Israel is not a foreign policy issue in the United States. It is an integral part of their domestic establishment. Now, therefore, India could not have done anything. And I don't think we should particularly get agitated about it. There are many other priorities that India has to address. I don't think that anyone could have been more influential or less influential than has been the case. So I don't think that we today should be particularly clamoring to see a certain position emerging in New Delhi that we are not going to do whenever whatever happens. As the ideological affinity, the political and military relationship with Netanyahu and with Israel, and the kind of relationship we are building up with the United States, all of these are factors that have influenced us, and they are likely to remain so. I don't think India wants to get into rhetoric as an end in itself. And I think that this, what we have done so far, is, I think, adequate, and we have to live with it.
Okay. Thiru, you want to say something? Thiru?
No, not really, sir. I think, Ambassador Almis Ahmad has very eloquently answered the question. I don't have
Okay. Dr. Awad?
Well, I was always under of the impression that many people misunderstand India position by calling India is not reading the West Asian affairs quite clearly, especially after there is no special advisor to the Prime Minister. I mean, like prior to 2014, we always had somebody on the with the government part. But I think India need to be a little more involved in understanding that new scenario, the changes taking place. And as we say that I don't feel that anybody should think that Indian position toward West Asia has changed, but I think India has to be more careful because they need to fasten its belt. The questions of spreading of this violence, terrorism, extremism will extend from Mauritania to Jiang Jinping in Uyghur in China. So I think everybody has to watch the development and really expose the actual factors behind the spread and address the issue of terrorism. Thank you.
Thank you. Leela, you were Deputy National Security Advisor. Do you have some view of what has been said so far? Leela. Leela Punappa, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you want to comment on anybody's comment or add something of your own?
No, I mean, I think what we've heard has been very extensively thought out, and I have no differences with them. I would really comment on this from the historical point of view, because I think history has shown us that injustice on this scale will come back to bite you. You don't hear too much about the Balfour Declaration these days. The utter arbitrariness and actually the hypocrisy of Europe being as anti-Semitic as it was, just trying to sort of park its problem somewhere else. And I think this is really the passion with which, as many of our speakers today have said, on the Arab street, regardless of what the rulers do, whether it's Saudi Arabia or UAE or anybody else, is that this causes anger. Now, I've also witnessed, in fact, this was shortly after after Iraq was driven out of Kuwait, when I went to Kuwait, saw the oil fires burning and so on, and the attitudes towards the Palestinians. There's no great love lost, that's accepted. But at the same time, I think what we are seeing, quite frankly, nobody's mentioned the word, is a new Nazism on the part of Israel. Ethnic cleansing, driving people out, the kind of massacres that we've seen in Gaza. So, unfortunately, I think one has to agree with Dr. Awad that the conflict is going to continue. There's no question about it. And the United States will try to do whatever. Trump, of course, as Talmiz, I think, has given us a very good analysis of how he postures. And he makes these wild statements and then probably sits back and watches with amusement as when everybody takes it very seriously. So there are extensive discussions, Gaza, Riviera, and so on and so forth. But
Okay.
the serious part of it is that Israel is operating in the West Bank. I don't think it gets enough publicity in terms of the kind of damage that is happening there or what happened to Lebanon. So we are going to see a changing map, unfortunately, and the conflict will continue.
Okay, I see among the audience my old friend, Dr. Kiran Karnik. Kiran, are you there? Dr. Kiran Karnik.
Yes, I am. Thank
I'm
you.
glad to see you. You have been advising the corporate sector. From that angle, do you think creating Mediterranean Riviera in Gaza, as President Trump is loudly thinking about, is really practically possible?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Surendra. And just a few brief comments starting where you said. But first, I want to thank the participants for a very, very interesting and cogent discussion, which brought out a number of issues. Just 2 or 3 comments, Surendra, if I may, and then I have 2 very brief questions. First, probably given his background, and I say this only half facetiously, Mr. Trump sees tremendous prospects for seaside resorts all along Gaza. So it's little wonder that he would like buying real estate everywhere, whether it's Greenland or Gaza. He would like to invest here and create his own little Trump land with a lot of resorts. I said that's only half facetious because I don't know. He's a loose cannon and he feels that money solves all conflicts. And, he do something to try and get there. It's no solution. It's not going to work. But he may try to push this. And I'm no expert in that area, so I'm listening to others rather than commenting. But 2 other brief comments and questions, Surendra, if I may.
Please.
First, to me, it seems from very, very limited knowledge that while the sentiment on the Arab street is one thing, no Arab government for many, many, many years is serious about the Palestinians. They've been left out on a limb. There's some lip support and nothing more. When Palestinians were being butchered in Gaza, literally, the voices were a bit muted. And very sadly, including the Indian voice, which is always spoken of. And I know the reasons, which we all know, but I think it's bad. And I think the situation as it's developed is very adverse to India. And our position in that makes it worse. Because we are now will be, I fear so, I hope not, but I fear so, one more target for terrorist fundamentalist forces. Only because we are seen as being close to Israel on the side of the West and doesn't help us. So I don't know, in terms of our own self-interest, forget morality, forget Gandhism, just in terms of our limited self-interest, this is not a very good position to be taking. And we have increasingly antagonized the Arab street on this. 2 brief questions, partly related to the last comment. I tried very hard with 0 success that just as elsewhere in the world, we have helped with humanitarian aid. Why don't we set up a field hospital, if not in Gaza, at least across the border, where Indian medical facilities and Indian medical doctors who have provided exemplary treatment in other cases, including quite recently in the Turkey earthquake, would have done something which would have got us a lot of goodwill without antagonizing our possible ally Israel, fine, humanitarian aid. And we didn't, for some reason, very directly and visibly do any humanitarian aid. The second brief question is in relation to what was being discussed earlier, that whatever the Indian position may be, what is it that prevents us from, at least take a much more neutral position on this, as we did in Ukraine, with great success. We have neither tilted this way nor that way. We are held firm to our view. And we said this is in our own self-interest. And why is it that in this case, we have so completely sacrificed, where the general perception, and experts may differ, the general perception, both in India and outside, from whatever I get, at least from the limited circle I have abroad, is that India is basically aligned with the US and Israel.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This is the last thing. So I will request all three. Talmi, you go, then Dr. Awad and Trimurti, if you can really respond to these 2 points made by Dr. Karnik about the hospital and the last one. Talmi, you are unmuted already.
You see, we are discussing this issue during a period when it is live. We don't have the comfort of analyzing something that has already passed. We do not also have the leisure to discuss where it is likely to go. We are in the midst of confrontation and conflict. And also, I may add, confusion. Where it will go, my sense is as follows. I think that phase one will go reasonably satisfactorily. It's a very prolonged period. 42 days for phase one is a prolonged period. But now we come to phase two. I am very concerned at this stage whether Donald Trump's intervention has damaged the prospects for phase two. Netanyahu has been hostile to phase two from the beginning because it calls for total Israeli military withdrawal from Gaza at a time when there is no clarity about what is likely to be the shape of the governance of this enclave and its 2.5 million people, 2.3 million people. He is very keen. Now, he has a problem. He has got two serious problems. Number one, that Hamas remains intact. Blinken has already said that they have recovered their manpower, and they seem, and you have seen during the handover that they have declared that they are in charge. The second issue for him is keeping his coalition together. Now, there you have his right wing have said they will bring the coalition down the minute there is withdrawal from Gaza. They do not want any withdrawal. On the contrary, they want a cleansing of Gaza so that they can put the Jewish settlements. These are his two issues. Only Donald Trump can ensure that phase two is implemented. Here we have confusion because he has made a statement that this will be handed over, that the Israeli government, Israeli armed forces are already preparing for the cleanse. I don't know what they can do to cleanse Gaza, but they are doing something, and they will hand over the enclave to the American armed forces. Now he has just said that there's no time bound rush about it. Some people have said that the ceasefire agreement, is a comprehensive arrangement. That means you can't pick and choose what you want. And that Donald Trump is likely to insist that phase two be implemented along with phase one. But these are matters of very serious detail for which Donald Trump is ill-equipped. And that is why I am worried that Netanyahu may take advantage of this confusion and ensure that somehow phase two is scuttled. Now, he has a problem that there are 79 hostages who have to come back, of whom possibly 30 are dead, but there are many who are not dead at all. Many Israelis are very worried that Donald Trump's intervention has now that it could become a disincentive for Hamas to not go forward with the release of the hostages. So we have a lot of uncertainty with regard to almost every aspect of the scenario. Maybe we can have a chat again after a month and review what
Okay.
has happened. But till then, as of now, I'm not sure that we have any clarity about most of these serious matters.
Okay. Dr. Awad, you want to add anything?
Thank you. I think I make a small conclusion remarks, which is I am a little bit keen on putting it. First of all, we are witnessing an illogic changes in this world. I mean, there is a president who have 34 cases against him, and he's representing the supreme power of the globe, and that is Donald Trump. And we have a person who is wanted by the International Court, the criminal courts, which is also wanted by them. And both of them are deciding the future of the Middle East. So first of all, if Mr. President Trump wanted to evict the Palestinian, I think he doesn't read history. Why he's sending back all the immigrants, Mexican and Indian and everybody from his border back into their native country? So if he apply the same logic in Palestine, then he should send back the Israelis who came from the United States, and they will be happy to have the 51 province of the United States there. That is one of solution to settle the Middle East. The second part is Palestine is not for sale, definitely. So as long as there is occupation, there will be resistance, and they will continue to resist, even with the last blood of a Palestinian who survived inside or outside Palestine. That is also has to be taken in consideration. This is the logic of history. We cannot, divert it from any, because of the using the might as a only way of achieving your political objective in the absence of a comprehensive political framework for a complete solution to the Middle East. I think these are the issues has to be taken in consideration. The third point which I wanted to raise is about he spoke of 1.7 million Palestinian in Gaza, and we all know there were 2.5 million Palestinians. So I think we have to see that figure properly and decide whether it was 700, where did they disappear? Are they still under the debris where they were expelled into Jordan and Egypt? What happened? We need to find out. And let us remember that 75% of the Palestinians in Gaza are survivors of the genocide committed in Palestine, in different parts of Palestine, and their home were destroyed. So that we are talking of justice or injustice, I think future will tell, and the future generation will take the lead in finding a better solution, a viable for a comprehensive peace in the region where we can survive with our own Semite, the Jew and the Arab and the Muslim live together.
Thank you. Okay, Talmiz, unmute yourself.
I've had my say.
Yes.
I think it's Thiru's turn, no?
Yeah, okay. You want to add anything? Otherwise, Thiru. Okay, Thiru, you go. Unmute yourself now. Yes.
No, just a very quick and short thing that I think as far as India is concerned, there is also one more consideration why we have not reacted as more forcefully than we ought to. And that's probably because we are also taking the cue from what the Gulf and the Arab countries are doing. That they have not taken on a very aggressive position, but I have a feeling that once the 42 days are over and this question of permanent ceasefire is seriously discussed, I don't see how it can just be between the Israelis and the Americans to take a call on this. I have a feeling that we should have the Gulf countries and the Arab countries come in, because they have been major players even to get the parties together and have this type of a proposal for May, the May proposal for ceasefire. And they have to be important actors. So now the Gulf countries can no more sit back and pretend that it's going to be just the two of them or the three of them. They have to take a more active stand. And I really wish they do that, because this is not a conflict which, something I don't think anyone really wants this conflict. This is very serious. It goes to the very root of the Palestinian cause. And it cannot be just, about annexing of the West Bank or annexing or letting the Gaza be the state of Palestine of the future and saying that you got your state, all 5 million of you, please move there. Because they have stopped the UNRWA or UNRWA, whatever. I mean, they have stopped them from operating in the Palestine. And that's actually a very important decision to stop them from operating, because you are basically saying that you're removing one of the roots of the entire Palestinian cause, which is to address the people who have come out as refugees and dispossessed from the Palestinian land. So I think one by one, the roots are being cut. So it's very important for the Arab countries to come in. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all the three panelists. You have done a wonderful job. Very insightful, incisive, and thought-provoking. As Talmi said, maybe we will meet again after 1 month. We don't have, let me clap myself to all of you and hope to see you again. Thank you. Good night.